When I looked in the mirror, my voice was quite clear. You're ugly, you're too thin, your hairline's receding, you got a pimple on your chin. And that was when she gave me a piece of advice that changed my life. She gave me a hug. And she said, treat yourself like someone you loved. Treat yourself like someone you loved. Now, I had been standing, but I needed to be sitting because I couldn't believe that I had been letting myself keep forgetting that I was who I'd been looking for. And deep in my core, I knew it was time to stop looking for more until I could look through all my fear and look into a mirror and see clearly that the man looking back at me was the only one who can make me happy, and I am already enough.
Welcome back to It's a Graham and Matt podcast. I'm Matt.
It's a Graham Matt podcast, and he always announces himself first.
Yeah. I'm Alan, by the way.
We got Dustin here as a special guest with us today.
Hello. Thanks for having me here,
Dustin,
guys.
Dustin worked with me at and which you may hear about later. He's also an alumni of.
You might know my mom, Dustin.
College.
Oh, really?
You might know my mom. She went in there and bitched about a lot.
Oh my gosh!
It was always user error, but she was like, "You guys and your phones suck. Where's Matt? He's the only one that fixes anything."
Yeah, he pulled out all his hair after trying to solve problems, huh?
No, she loved me. It was all good.
That's right.
So yeah,
she wasn't trying at all, by the way.
Yeah. So we as you probably saw in the intro of the video, we opened up the podcast today with one of Dustin's TikToks. The reason we brought Dustin on today is because Dustin is a Twitch streamer. He's a fellow podcaster, an avid TikTok user. And a big thing for Dustin is mental health. It's a community that he's been trying to build on his own, working along with some other people as well, I suppose. But he's had a pretty good amount of success with it. Dustin, you got like over 1,000 followers on Twitch now, right?
We have 1.6 thousand followers on Twitch currently, and we have 10,000 fellow TikTokers, and still growing strong due to the last few videos we posted here, which is super awesome.
That's
super
pretty
excited
cool
to see where things go for 2021.
Yeah, it's awesome. So what got you into that?
So, I mean, honestly, like, I'll be straightforward. Like, the biggest thing with mental health, like, even for me, growing up was just, like, it was kind of super awkward. It's something I didn't understand or know. I kind of acted like one of those people who had it all together. And I hit a very dark point in my life where I was dealing with depression, suicidal thoughts. I had graduated with a pastoral degree and minor in counseling, and I applied to over, like, about 30 different churches and things and was declined by all of them after being in college for about 5 years. And then I swapped stores for jobs and what have you. And it was the #1 ranking store, and it was because personally I believe they weren't doing the best business practices, and I just couldn't sleep at night thinking about it. My sister, literally, I remember while this was all unfolding and happening, was she's like, "You don't look okay. You look like you're on the verge of tears. What's wrong?" Yeah. And me being my dad's son, like, you don't talk about emotions. It's suck it up, buttercup, and that was not healthy for me and not good. And so eventually I hit
the typical northern Minnesota way.
Yeah, it really is, and it's unfortunate. And so I hit a very dark point where I wanted to end my life, and I pretty much drove out to vehicle, and I was about ready to do it. And I pretty much, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna write like one post here on Facebook and just let it all out, and whatever happens, happens. And my friend Paul from North Dakota, literally within 24 hours, like nobody else in my family, nobody else like reached out to me or anything. He literally calls me and says, "Hey, you need to go to counseling like right now." Well, I can't afford it. Like I'm dealing with my job. I just quit it and everything. I will pay for you to go. You're fucking going to get counseling. Yeah. And I was like, I was like, fine, you know what? I'll try it. And he's like, well, try it if it doesn't work, but like, we need to talk. We need to have a conversation right now. And honestly, I believe if my friend Paul did not reach out, I don't personally think I would still be here.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. And so with like all that compounded, I eventually started going to counseling and things. And I realized with everything else going on, like I never talked about my feelings, never talked about mental health. I kind of laughed it off or made fun of it, or acted like everything was okay. And I was like, wow, how many more people like me growing up the way that I did, like specifically like being raised in the church and things, and like just do these things and everything's gonna be okay. How many other people are suffering and experiencing this? And it changed my whole perspective on why I was running my stream and why I was doing what I was doing, because it was a way to like potentially, it was more of like a business proposition for streaming at first. I'll be totally honest. It's like, you can become a big streamer, you can become big, you can become the next ninja. And then it became more of like, how many other people are sitting at home depressed, like thinking these deep, dark thoughts, and they don't have anywhere to go with it. They have nowhere to escape. They have nowhere to be safe. And
Yeah.
and streaming eventually became more, instead of a business proposition, it became about building relationships and building friendships and learning how to have deep and hard conversations with the things going on inside, and making that be okay.
So while you're playing on like, how are you using the Twitch platform then? Are you playing games and having that communication,
Yes,
or
yes.
is that the communication solely? Is just your Twitch videos are solely
So
mental
I
health?
mean, so I mean, specifically, like that's the thing. Honestly, there's a lot of people who are a lot more qualified, who have done the research, who have done all these things. I've been learning so much more and doing a lot more of my own studying with mental health. But for me, it comes down to, I'm like, 2020 was just like a crappy year. And I always tell people, I'm like,
What are you talking about?
I, yeah,
Wait, isn't it still
I mean,
2020?
Yeah,
right.
basically.
But
Isn't this like
but
January or December, like 39th or something?
Yeah. Yep.
but honestly, I literally use Twitch as a way of, because like even on Mixer, I was just like, man, if people are having a shitty day, like I wish I had a place I could go to and I could feel free to talk about those things if I wanted to. And so literally every Twitch stream, like I have an auto bot set up. Like if you're thinking about suicidal thoughts and depression, because I'm very big into that, we did a charity stream. Because since my friend paid for me for like my counseling sessions, we did a week-long charity stream and we raised over $400, and I shaved my head bald. Because I didn't actually think we were gonna hit the goal.
Yeah.
We did, and so I was bald for like a few weeks there.
There you
But
go.
it was great and it was awesome. We were able to like
Matt's
pay it
been bald for
forward.
like 10 years, so
Yeah,
don't
I
feel bad.
know. Like, I know. I can grow it. It's all natural.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
fine.
yeah. He cannot.
But honestly, I've left it open, and I tell people, I'm like, hey, if you're having a crappy day, things are not going right. My DMs are open. My Twitch is open. My Twitter's open. If you need a vent, if you need to talk, like you are not alone. I was in that car by myself, and like it was probably one of the most terrifying and like scary places I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
Thinking about those things and those thoughts, because it's like it's not something you just talk about, or at least that's what I thought. It's not something you have like, hey, how's your day going? I feel like killing myself.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not something you just have on a normal conversation. And so now I'm like, there's other people out there, and it's scary and it's terrifying, especially on a Twitch platform where other people can see it. And so I invite people, like, if you want to talk about those things going on in your life, please DM me. You're not alone. Like, I want to talk with you. I want to have those conversations. I know how that feels. And I want anybody to ever feel that way and be alone in those moments.
Yeah,
And
dude.
so that's what I choose to do. And the amazing thing is, and the amazing thing that has happened with my community that I've called the Palm Fam, like we're just super positive. Like when you heal your family, the Olive Garden thing.
You got
Um,
unlimited breadsticks?
oh gosh, heck yes. But I tell everybody, like, dude, I'm having a really crappy day right now. 5 people on chat before I've said a word will be like, "What's wrong? Do you want to talk about it? How can I help?" Like,
Nice.
because when I was first doing it, it was really scary and kind of terrifying, like, because I was still processing everything going on inside of me. And like, how do you tell that to a community? Like, because people see you as somebody like super positive, super outgoing, and like they absolutely like look up to you for certain individuals, or they're your peers or what have you. And you're like, I feel like a failure and I'm not getting anywhere. And so it was taking that like perspective of, I'm this Twitch streamer. It's like, I'm a normal Joe just like everybody else. I've got a story, I've got things I'm going through. What's your story? How can I help you in your walk and what you're going through on your journey in life? Um, and make it meaningful and impactful. How can I make your day better if it's crappy? And I
Yeah,
think that's like as simple as it needs to be.
Yeah,
sure.
and that what's cool about that is like, so I'm a mental health counselor, and I do mobile crisis in
Yes,
northern Minnesota
absolutely
here
love
and
your
stuff like that
services.
too.
Yeah.
And and so the hard part is like, so I work with adolescents, K through 12
Yeah.
in that setting, and then mobile crisis is K through 12 too. Essentially, I don't work with adults because that's too difficult. No, it's just too much.
It's a bit challenging, yeah.
Kids are too much. But I've been doing this for, I'm dating myself, 20 years, doing mental health for 20 years.
That's
And
awesome.
what it comes down to is like the part of it that you're talking about is like there is no, it has to be community.
Mhm.
Without the community part, and this is what I realize as being a counselor is why my doors are open to everybody, why people are flooding to try to like talk and try to get things out, is because they finally realize like there's a safe place. I can say whatever I want and there's no judgment. And unless it's a safety to self or others, I can say whatever I want and no one's gonna know, for the moment at least.
Mhm.
And that also I have laws, statutes I have to abide by because I'm a counselor.
Yes, and yeah.
But for majority of what happens and what I realize is like, even though we have all these resources out there, like call, I need your name, I need your, like there's this pattern of stuff that we have to do to
Yeah.
collect information because companies don't get paid if you don't have information, you can't bill insurance, all these different things. And so what we locally in the community, like in the mental health realm, realize is the same thing that you're doing, is these small pockets of community. And we talk about this in our podcast anyway, but like politics and like everything that I talk about is community. And so having that community, people becoming willing to step up and say something. And this is not like, this stuff here is not my generation. Like being on a computer and having these conversations is not something that I grew up with, not something that I'm intact with.
They barely had telephones back then.
Gosh,
yeah, it was like
dial
this
up.
rotary, and then they
Rotaries.
had to plug the crap
I miss the
in.
rotary.
Yeah,
Wait,
Wait, Graham,
wireless phones?
Graham, I thought you communicated via telegraph.
Well,
Thought that was cellular
I
phone.
did have pigeons for a while,
Same
and
telegram.
then
Smoke signals.
yeah. But so what's cool about all this stuff is the more I dive into like the digital realm of things, because I've always been grassroots in the churches,
Old school, yeah.
which is cool. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what I do, and that's what I know. But to see more and more community aspect stuff go out there in these realms, Twitch realm, Discord realm, YouTube, TikTok. I just started following a dude on TikTok. This guy that dresses up. He paints himself in a mat like black, like skeleton guy. You guys have
I
probably
love
seen him.
cosplayers, yeah, probably.
Yeah, and this guy like showed his body the other day, and he's larger and was totally like broken by doing this. But when he puts his mask on and he puts his things on, like he's out there doing awesome things. And so it's just cool to like see like those parts of the community, because it can be washed away by tits and ass and politics as much as we want, right?
Yeah.
But then you're going to find these small pockets of people like trying to actually do positive things on these platforms. So it's cool, man. So like stoked to hear that you're doing that. Now I'm going to have to follow you.
Yeah. I think
It-
what's
that's-
cool about it too is like, I mean, I think it's probably safe to say that like when you're doing your Twitch streams or interacting with folks in your Discord, I mean, it's almost like is it fair to say it's almost like a continuous free therapy for you as well? Like,
Honestly, that is I'll be honest, yeah, like that's the other thing too, is like I feel good doing it, and I hope that they feel good too. I've literally had kids come up to me and say like, dude, you really inspired me, or like you really encouraged me. I guess I shouldn't say they came up to me, but like they commented and had some nice things to say, and I'm like, I'm glad, because I was like, these are the things I wish I knew when I was your age that would have been meaningful and impactful, and I wish I'd gotten it then, because I would be in a better place now.
Yeah,
And
sure.
it's just super beneficial on like both ends, honestly. And as I said, like as Graham was saying, like community based. I literally tell people, because a lot of people will come and ask me for streaming advice as well.
Yeah,
I
I've done
do
that.
give those
I've done
things
that with you too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
We're
I
going to
love
do
to
that with your
give.
TikTok because
Oh yeah, I've got a lot of ideas.
we are
but
definitely not TikTok savvy.
You know,
honestly,
go ahead.
well,
Sorry.
go ahead. I was gonna
No,
say you can
you're
go
good.
ahead. Okay. I was gonna say, shoot, lost my thought here. One moment. I was gonna say that's the other thing I tell people is like anytime that someone will take like because people get freaked out, like I need to have this many numbers or this many, and I'm like, stop, you've got it wrong.
Yeah.
You need to have one individual come in. If one person out of like the entire world literally stops in for 5 minutes and gives you 5 minutes of their time, like out of their day with their whole life and everything else going on, consider yourself lucky because
Oh,
not
yeah, for
everybody
sure.
gets that. And if you live with that perspective that somebody else has a life going on and that they're spending time with you and that there's some connection, because I believe the best part, and that's why I love Twitch, is video games break barriers. Honestly, in real life, I guarantee you there's probably 90% of people I would never talk to, either just based on judgmental bias on my own end or their end, or inconvenience or awkwardness or shyness, that video games breaks down barriers and walls. There's an instant connection. You clicked on it either because my title, because the game I'm playing, or the content that I have, or all three.
100%.
And
Yep.
that's what I love about it is I focus
And
on
that's at age range too. It can be
yeah,
kids to old asses like me, you know,
exactly,
Mhm.
jumping
exactly.
in and oh, thanks for agreeing that I'm an old ass, by the way.
No,
Just kidding.
Well, you are.
I believe in telling it like it is. Wisconsin reality. That's what
Yeah,
I
yeah,
do.
yeah.
There ain't no
Or-
Minnesota nights in me, eh?
Oh, you're
That's
Wisconsin.
true.
Well, I'm hanging up
Yeah.
now. This was a good podcast. I hope you guys had a great night. No.
Hey, you spent this much time with me. I'm Wisconsin born too.
Yeah.
It's fine, man.
Yeah, I just it's because you're cute. I guess I don't know.
That's fair. That's fair. One of
I
the
haven't
things
even
that you said that that resonates with me personally is like growing up in the church and like
Are
being
we showing
told,
off toys now?
Oh, that's
this is
Larry.
Larry.
That's
This is
Larry.
Larry
Oh,
from
okay.
Stream. Like,
Yeah, dude.
Oh, that's from his. Okay, I
I'll
That's
don't.
50%
explain more about
of
that later.
Dustin's success right there is Larry.
Literally, yeah, I kid you not. I kid you not. That is a true fact.
Larry and his cats, dude. Like on Dustin's chat, literally like there's a I don't know what you're
There's
calling
channel
it.
points. So if you watch my
Channel
stream
points.
so long, you can redeem points to do certain things, make me drink water, stretch. Have me review one of your Twitch streams. Like if you've
Mhm.
been watching long enough, and I will personally do it and like make a YouTube video on it to like help promote whatever individual because I like giving back to the community. But
Mhm.
literally, if you donate 2,500 points, I will give my cats treats, and
Yep.
people will love it. I had to limit it down to 2, otherwise my cats are already pretty big as it is. You know, they're quarantined all the time, but
Yep.
like
Yep.
people love it, and so and then I've been doing that on TikTok. Is like, yeah, no, come
Mhm.
over to Twitch. You can watch me give my cats treats and stuff, and
Yep.
it's a great way to interact and show that like you're not this larger than life person, but it's like I've got cats. I've got to deal with stuff just like everybody else.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Do you want some kids?
I don't think I got time for it, you know?
Yeah. So like you were saying earlier, you're talking about like growing up in the church and everything, and like hide and like kind of keeping your emotions down, or like as they would say, you know, give it up to God and stuff. Like that really resonates with me because I remember growing up, that was like emotions weren't a thing in my family either, not with my dad, really anything. And then going into college at Oak Hills and stuff, like that's really the first time I was able to like really have a bunch of deeper conversations that wasn't just, well, you know, you got to pray about it, you know, because the thing that I always thought was a little dangerous about that, you know, after I kind of stepped away from that um whole faith thing was like it doesn't really do a lot to like really have you believe in yourself that, you know, you can pull yourself out of some situations, or you know, it wasn't like you have to give it all up to some divine being and they're just going to magically lift you out, because I feel like that's super dangerous, you know, like
That's literally, truth be told, like that was what pushed me to the point of like wanting to commit suicide and things, is that I was this pastoral graduate who pretty
Mhm.
much had it all together. I knew a lot. I was super knowledgeable and super positive, but like deep down, I was just down and depressed, and something just felt off and wrong. And I like couldn't figure it out. And I kept doing all the answers that you would find or was given by the church.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that is the hardest part, is like, how do you bridge that gap of being raised so very, I want to say, like me personally, I felt narrow minded.
Yeah.
I was very narrow-minded, like, "Oh, the reason that your life is like this is because, you know, you haven't prayed or you haven't done this or you haven't done these like
Yep.
Yeah.
things or traditions within the belief system." And like for
Did
me,
you
I was like,
tithe enough? I've had that comment.
it,
Have you
Oh,
tithed
yeah.
enough?
well,
Yeah.
have you given enough? And I'm just like, I feel, me personally, I was like, I felt I gave more than anybody else I knew, not to be like arrogant, but it was like that is how I personally felt. And I eventually, after everything had happened, and I like started viewing things differently, I was like, well, what if this isn't true? What if there's another way and solution? Because the college that I went to beforehand, they pretty much said that that counseling was bullshit. Like
Yeah,
you
where
did
did
not
you
need
go?
it. It
Did you
was
go to
not.
Pensacola or something?
It was Pensacola, yes.
Pensacola,
In
Dude.
Florida.
So
Like
many
if
jokes about
if you
Pensacola.
thought Oak Hills was like
Oh.
strict, it ain't got nothing on Pensacola.
I've got a
We
we
always
had
joke
separate
about that.
stairwells, elevators. I'm not even joking.
I've got a story. A couple of my buddies from high school, one of them went down to Pensacola there, and he was emailing his girlfriend who was back up here in Minnesota, and he's like, "Man, this sucks." And they like, I can't remember, but he got like 50 or 100 demerits or whatever since they used the
It's
demerits.
75 demerits.
Yeah,
if you,
yeah.
like hit someone,
Yeah.
and if you do it twice, it's 150, which is the total.
Yeah,
But it
so-
resets every semester, so that's what my brother did.
Yep, and so like he said it like twice, said that and something else in this email to his girlfriend, and like they blocked his internet access, and like he couldn't.
Oh, I found a way around it
Did they
actually.
read your
But
emails?
Yeah.
no, they scan, and so pretty much like in a
You
normal.
pay. Well, okay. I'll let you
Okay,
finish.
okay. Let me actually give you the slogan that I came up with. It's cheap, but at the cost of your freedom.
God,
Ah,
what is
that was my experience.
It's like
That's
the Patriot
literally,
Act.
that's not their slogan, but that was my slogan for them.
That
But
is
literally,
insane.
but literally, their filter was an anti-filter in the sense of like when you go to a normal school, they block out certain words. For them, it was block everything but these things and work backwards.
Yep.
But I eventually found a way around it. Actually, I remember I was on Facebook on their internet, like, oh, and that was banned. Like, and I was just like, "Hey guys, I'm sending a message from Pensacola." Like, ha, ha, ha. It's
That's
like,
crazy.
'cause
I only ran into an
yeah.
issue one time with like a scanning software. So Alicia and I, my wife, at our first college, I was using one of my dorm mates' laptops, and I was getting a little sexy with my chatting to
Yeah, getting a little spicy,
keep it PG-13, right?
so then
And
I
then-
peeled the banana back.
Yeah, and I didn't know that this person's mom literally could see everything that was on that person's laptop. So they sent a letter out to the dean and all the top people at the school, and like
Oh.
I don't think we like there was like you guys have to be held accountable. I mean, you guys got to keep each other accountable to being pure and blah 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 and all this stuff.
Obviously, teenagers going through those things obviously can be held accountable. Like nothing ever happens. Nobody acts on impulse or anything. Like I've seen
Yeah,
it. It
right?
never happens, right?
Right. So I was like, oh my God, I can't believe somebody read the shit that I said, because that was like straight out of like penthouse letters and shit. I was like, yikes. But that also reminds me of the time when we were at Oak Hills. Alan, do you remember when so like it started out that people were pirating games,
Yep.
and they were trying to figure out, we all got sat down, who's pirating games? Somebody pirated The Sims.
Oh yeah.
And basically, like a couple weeks later,
How dare you play God?
the entire web
Right,
filter,
right.
the entire web filter went completely down.
Yep.
So like literally we can look at anything. So I was like, oh, okay, Pornhub, cool.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I was like, what the hell is going on? There's no filter. They have to see this. Turns out that they just it was broken. They didn't know how to fix it because it's Oak Hills and they probably didn't have money to do it.
Well,
It's crazy considering the tuition
it wasn't.
I fucking paid.
I can't remember his name. It wasn't Conrad, but one of the guys that used
It
to
was
work.
Conrad.
Was it Conrad?
Conrad.
I think
It was Conrad.
wasn't he the one that
Conrad Schmid?
Mm-hmm.
Connie?
Wasn't he the one that
okay.
told us? He said, "Yeah, I could fix it, but I'm not going to."
Oh my
Re-
Yeah,
rest,
like-
by the way, rest in peace, Conrad. He passed away a couple months ago.
Did he?
Oh,
Oh,
man.
man.
Jeez.
He was a good dude. I liked
Yep,
him a
phenomenal.
lot.
He worked with us for our company.
Oh, really?
Mm.
Yeah, for
Nice.
years. Close friend. So yeah.
Yeah. But I guess circling back, like I really love what you're doing. Because like it goes to show that like literally anybody can make a difference. I mean, anytime I'm listening to the radio on the way to work and shit, like I was on my way to St. Cloud today, and like I'm listening to the metal station on Sirius, and like they'll go from like a song talking about death and murder, and then they're like, hey guys, just we want to make sure everybody knows, like just randomly throughout the day they'll be like, hey, if you know somebody's struggling, call this
Yeah.
number. Because I mean, the biggest thing, we talked about this during our COVID episode, is like right now with
Mhm.
people quarantining,
Oh
like,
gosh, it is so
mental
hard.
health is definitely
All-time
something
low.
that all-time low. And I mean, a lot of people, like for me, and for instance, where I live, I don't have any any like real close friends here. Like, and so like digital stuff is the only way I can communicate with those that I know. So I mean, from doing this podcast to shit talking with my buddies playing video games, playing Destiny,
Heck
like
yeah.
that's my social outlet. And so like I think what you're doing is important because it's something that so many people are doing. Number one. Number two, it's so casual. Like it's
Yeah.
not this forced, how are you feeling today? It's like, hey, come hang out. We're a family. I
Yeah.
I
Come be
want
part
you
of
to,
it.
yeah, like you're treating it like a conversation between friends versus you talking to some certified individual, and like
Well,
sometimes that's good. Like, I'm not to discredit what you do, Graham, because what you do is great work too. But I mean, that kind of thing, there's so many different places to get help, and like the
And
people
I
that like
Mhm.
Dustin works with might not fit into the category you work with, so it's good to have those different avenues for that.
yeah, and I mean when it comes to mental health, um, the only thing that I ever say for people is when it's above your head, when then push them to somebody else.
and
And
that's
all else fails, I always
exactly
push them
yeah.
to somebody else because I've being a professional for 20 years. The problem for me is it's my job. And
Yes.
so there's it lessens the excitement of doing it, right?
Mhm,
Because my job is long term. I have clients that I've had for 4 years,
mhm,
and they're clients. It's not a relationship, and that's the part that's
Yes.
different with things like this. Is where you get to have a relationship, and but you also know when you get to bow out, right?
And that's
And
exactly I think
yep,
that's exactly it, is kind of differentiating it in the sense of like, I'm friends with a lot of people. I have friends in South Africa, Australia, Germany. Like, it blows my mind at like the reach that Twitch and TikTok has. People I'd never meet. People who are staying up to like 2 a.m. to talk and hang out because they
yeah,
don't get that experience anywhere else. But I'm like, if you are like feeling down and stuff, here's like the number to call, like the suicide hotline. We have I used to have it as a command in stream on Mixer, and I was like, "You know what? If somebody was going through that and they wanted to keep quiet about it and do it discreetly, then it's kind of an awkward situation." So I just have it auto run like every so
yep,
often. So like if people are in that situation, they have that option. And if I
yeah,
find that people are like really struggling, because I'm like, "Hey, if you need to talk and vent to me," I'm like, "You can absolutely do that." But then sometimes I've had a few points where like to me it's still I keep it discreet. I'm still friends with people, but I'm like, "Hey, this is like above me. Like you need to personally reach out to someone like either a guardian or an adult friend or like consult a therapist. Oh, you don't have one? Well, like I've been using betterhelp.com for
yep,
therapy, which is digital, and it's a licensed therapist. It's actually done me a lot of good. I plan on doing a YouTube review on that because
yeah,
I've been
yeah.
using it the last 6 months.
Good
And I'm
pause
like,
moment. If you want 25% off or something like that, I think it's Smartless in the code or Dave in the code for that website right now. They're offering
"Oh,
big
sweet.
discounts.
Yeah,
So
check that.
yeah,
We'll
oh,
have to
not bad.
verify that. Put that in the links." Yeah, but like seriously, it's done me a whole bunch of good because you can literally you can text them, you can call them, you can video chat with them at any time. Like, which I mean, now that people are quarantined, because people are like, "That's dumb. Don't you want to see a therapist in person?" Which is what I did beforehand. But it's like, you know what? I'm having like a breakdown here. I'm like literally having a panic attack. I can literally type out my thoughts and feelings in a text, send it to them, and we can review what I was feeling and what led up to it, as opposed to like it's a few days later and you can't
yeah.
remember what really happened. And
Well,
so
and
I've
the
Oh,
been
nice
100%.
finding it super
the,
Yeah.
beneficial.
those nice things with the instant part, and this is again where I talk about like professionalism, and or like having professional help versus having
Yes.
the community too, is that when it gets to that point where you're like, yo, just text them. That's the part that's really cool because when you get into therapy, it's not instant gratification. It's not instant growth. It's you got to build rapport. They need the backstory. There's so much, and it's less to do about like in the moment, and it's more to do about long term. And
Yes.
so the in the moment part, the mobile crisis line, text for lifeline, all these different places, the counseling places, all those different stuff. And every county and every community and every state has these numbers, and then there's a national number too.
Mhm.
Um, but the cool thing about that is it's instant, right? It's right there. So like when I get a mobile crisis, when my pager goes off, and yes, it's a pager. Like I feel like I'm from 1989 with a pager. But when the
That's what I
pager
was
goes
born.
up, yeah.
Pull it off MacGyver's body.
You
last
weren't
20
born.
made.
Oh God. Anyway, but like when the pager goes off, it's instant. I call that number and I'm talking to whoever paged me, and I'm walking through them whatever nasty situation that they're in right at that moment, whether it's being suicidal, feeling suicidal, depression, whatever it is, or just being in a fight, or
Yeah.
all the way down to like, I talked to a kiddo, I'm gonna say a couple of years ago, about anorexia, and they just wanted to be done with anorexia, and they texted the suicide hotline because they're like, I don't know who to text, so they texted that, and it came to me, and we worked them through them.
Such a great resource.
Yeah, so I mean, like, so these communities and having those resources and pushing them out to those instant parts, super good. And then long term, if you need long term care,
Oh
that's
yeah.
when that therapeutic support kicks in.
Yeah.
Because that's the scary part. Most kids, or most 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds, I'm 40. We look at the therapist part as like, it costs money.
Yes.
We have to tell somebody that we need to set it up, right? So you have to tell your
You have to
parents,
set
you
an
have to tell your
appointment,
wife or
yeah.
your husband or your partner. And then you have to go there and you have to meet somebody that you don't know and then try to build rapport so you have trust.
Yeah.
So you're paying for all these sessions to build trust first.
See, yeah.
It's confusing. It's hard
You
for
know,
people to get into it.
I'm glad you said that, because I was just thinking about that. Like, one of the things that I really, really appreciate about what you're doing, Dustin, is, the community that you build, you're building that trust before a problem might even happen. So, I mean, you might have somebody who's a part of your community and they might not be struggling with things right off
Oh
the
yeah.
bat. But the
Oh,
thing is
that's
the
happening,
minute
yeah.
that they have an episode or things are starting to take like a downturn, you've already built that relationship. So it's so much easier for them to like reach out and say,
Yeah.
hey, I trust you already because we already have this relationship. This is what's going on. So I think that's a crucial part of what you're doing that I think is super important. And I really like
It's
that
easy.
aspect.
It's easier to impose on them to say you need to call someone because
Yeah.
that relationship's there. And that's, like I work in gotta be careful.
You work
and
at
that
a place.
I was
yeah, I
gonna
work at
say, like, I'm not paid or like there's no monetary value for me helping someone. Like it is genuinely me caring. And I think that's unfortunately like somewhat of a disconnect is
yeah.
that obviously a therapist or a counselor obviously wants to help you, and that is your job, and that's what you get paid to do, which is an amazing and awesome thing. But for some
But it's a
people, that
but
may
it's a
come off from a wrong point or a wrong perspective, I should say, or
yeah.
skewed
It's
perspective.
because it's a business.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part about working in mental health. When I was younger, I was doing what you're doing, but not in the digital realm because
It
we
didn't
had
really
we
exist,
had
honestly.
Atari's
Just
or
in
whatever the hell it was.
TV or
Yeah,
Mixer
Different
or
yeah,
gosh.
format.
yeah.
Yeah.
But when I starting in 6th grade, I had a friend commit suicide, and then by the time I graduated high school, I had 6 friends commit suicide,
Mhm.
and so I did exactly that: build a community. And
Yeah.
made sure that people know, like, I essentially started counseling when I was like in 6th grade and up. And that's what led me into doing what I do now. Without those nasty experiences, I wouldn't have been there. Also had your own suicide things and all those different jazz throughout my life. But I forget where I was going with that. But it goes into that point of like, that community again versus professional is it can be skewed because people I've
People have
gotten
a
the
bad
comments so many.
experience.
Yeah, I've gotten the comments so many times. So I work K through 12, so that tells you I work obviously in like a
Mhm.
school district setting. Um, and the cool thing about that type of setting is that you get to interact and build that community without having to see kids. Like my room is a safe place for all, and I
Yeah.
get random kids just showing up to my room and be like, "I just need to sit for a minute." That's
Mhm.
cool. That's different
Yeah.
than being like in a therapeutic office setting and things like that. Um, but it is even those kids. Like I'll get kids come in and they're just like, "Well, you're only here because I'm paying you."
Yeah,
Right.
unfortunately.
Yes and no. You're not paying me much.
Right.
I could go work at Burger King and probably make more.
Mhm.
But there's not a lot you can say to that except for building that relationship and being
Yes.
present in the moment. Where like this, you're you're present in building that relationship, and you're not getting paid.
Yeah.
which
And
is good.
which I mean, I
So-
think that's the other thing too, is just being I'm very intentional and like, guys, I had a really bad mental health day, or like heck, even earlier this morning for Twitter, like I just could not fall asleep. I was like up super late and I was just like, I'm taking a mental health day. I'm taking the next 2 days off or whatever, just because I know like for my limits, I know I'm like spreading myself thin doing Twitch, TikTok, and all these other things and all these other ideas that I have. I need to stop and take care of everything and get all my ducks in a row and then come back stronger so I can like be ready for these things. And people like, because originally I was afraid, I'm like, gosh, people are gonna think I'm chickening out or gonna be disappointed. And I'm like, no, dude, I respect that. Like, I took a mental health day or whatever. I told my parents and this and that. And it's like, I'm like super excited and super happy for them that they're like, they feel more confident to like be open and clear and direct, especially if they're like talking to their parents about it, that something is going on and is wrong. Because sometimes I have people come in and they feel like they can't talk to their parents, they can't talk to anyone, or they talk to a counselor at school. And it's like my heart really goes out to them. And I'm like at least glad they're like talking to someone as opposed to
Yeah.
like holding it in, letting
Yeah.
it fester, and something potentially really bad could happen that could be avoided.
And that's the other thing. Like I've realized in the professional realm is if I'm busy, I'm busy.
Yeah.
Like because there's not one person I'm not working with that doesn't need that time that they're with me. And it's interesting because at a school setting, if a kid's in crisis and I'm with a kid who's in crisis, somebody else has to jump in, and maybe that will happen, or they'll walk by my office and see my door shut and they won't do anything about it.
That stuff doesn't have a 9 to 5. I mean, it's
No, it doesn't have a 9 to 5.
well,
so.
like kind of like listening to what you guys are saying about like the paid versus the unpaid and all that. But I think like you're right how it can be skewed. But I think the important difference here is both of you
Intentions are right.
yeah, I mean, beyond that, even like, I mean, I have friends who've gone into this kind of industry on the professional level, and the empathy training and stuff you have to do. But I mean, based on your guys' previous experiences, I mean, the empathy is already there. So I mean, like the fact that you guys have gone through these situations, that's what really gives you the authority to be able to talk about the things you do. And you guys have those past experiences, you can better identify with the people who are having these crisis moments. And I mean, as for like you with like needing to take a mental health day, I mean, I think the fact that when you do need that and your community responds in that manner, I mean, I think that's one of those moments where you have to say, look, I'm doing this. Like, this is what success looks like. I've built my community up to the point where they understand this. Like, they know what that means. It's not like Ninja saying, well, I need to take a few days off. They're like, come on, I need them Fortnite dubs. Like,
Yeah.
your community knows, look,
Right.
this is what we stand for. We stand for, a healthy mental health, and if the person who's leading all this needs a mental health day, like if we were in that situation, he'd be like, do what you need to do to get better. So, I mean, like, I think the fact that your community responds so positively to that means that you're absolutely doing something right. And like, that's something you should be proud of, in my opinion.
Thank
So,
you. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I feel that that's part of it too, is like, I tell people, I'm like, I'm not a trained professional. Yes, I graduated with a pastoral degree. Yes, I minored in counseling. Like, I do know a lot of information, but at the end of the day, like my own personal story, my own personal struggles, like that's what drives me. Like, I'm going to be open and honest with you. Like, I share my story a lot of different places and talk to a lot of different people because I feel it's meaningful and impactful, and then they're more likely and more willing to open up and share their story, and there's this mutual connection and understanding of where we're both coming from.
And now let's go kill
And
zombies.
yeah,
Right. I mean,
but I
that's
mean,
the
it's
cool
based
part
on
about that.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
well, I think
That's what I like about like TED Talks and stuff like that,
Yes.
where you get these people coming in and talking about real life things. And I use that for counseling all the time. Like I bring those type of videos in because sometimes it's just like, all right, we've been talking to you for a year. We're a little bit tired of you. It's like, okay, we need to bring a different aspect into it. But like all those communities, TED Talks a community, your Twitch is a community for you. I'm learning about TikTok, and TikTok
I
is
was gonna say, I would recommend also like The Dark Place is a podcast that
yep,
they so you're
yep,
yeah, it's
yep.
fantastic.
I listen to that. Yep. When I go on walks, I listen to that. But all these like these things, or what's the other one? There's the funny side of depression,
Yes,
or
I was gonna say there's so many pockets
the
of
hilarious life of
resources.
depression, or stuff like that.
Yes,
Yeah, great things because
so
you don't.
fantastic.
Yeah, you don't realize that one's about superstar movie actors who have depression, and this really came out of like the Robin Williams era of killing himself,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and really got built into that about like it's everywhere, and people are finally really really talking about it. It's always been talked about, right? Like this is the part for me, like 20 years of doing this, I'm like, and being 40 years old, I'm like, it's always been talked about,
Yeah,
but
'cause
it's
uh-huh.
almost like when you talk about church, it feels like it's always been talked about, but it's the Sunday goods, right? When you go to church and someone walks up to you in the morning, it's like, oh man, Matt, how you doing today? Oh man, I'm really struggling, la da da da. It's like, well, I'll pray for you, bye. Or
Yeah.
you say something and all they want to hear is good, right? The Sunday goods.
Well, nobody
And so
really
that's
wants
very
to
much,
hear how you
yeah,
feel. It's kind of
yeah,
that.
that's very much mental health too. Unfortunately, it's very much mental health where um, we
But it's
have
been
all
more
these
intentional.
resources, but it comes down to where it's like, all right, we got these resources, but make an appointment. Oh, yeah, you're not feeling good today? That's
Yeah.
too bad.
Yeah.
Write it on a post note and put it on the tree,
Mhm.
type mentality, or what,
Put it
or
in the
put it,
prayer chain.
yeah, put it in prayer
Yeah,
train or
oh
on the cross.
Yeah.
man.
But
'Cause see
even
mm,
secular mental health is the same way as church, like youth ministry, mental health, things like that. Like it just kind of gets pushed aside until we have to deal with it because now it's a big issue. Like the kid tried to kill himself or
it's an
whatever it
yeah,
may be.
because it's
Yeah.
always nobody. Because like, that's the thing. Because like, even me personally, like, growing up, I remember distinctively, like, going to a Christian-based school, and we had a speaker, I can't remember if like, what it was called, if it was like Surge or something, and, like, they're like, "Hey, show up and you have a chance to win a free iPhone." That's why I went. And the guy, I literally
Yeah.
will never forget this. The guy was just like, "Yeah, there's some days where you just feel like you can't get out of bed and you're super depressed." And I'm just like, why would anybody at this great school, and we have such a great service and all these things, like, why would you ever feel that way and feel down and depressed? That's stupid. I'll never feel that way. And then like 15 years later, like, I'm in a vehicle and it's like,
Yeah.
and my whole perspective changed. But I remember, like, that was my mentality. It was like so narrow and negative. And so that's what I tell people is, I'm like, mental health, like, unfortunately we make it complicated. Yes, the professionals and everybody does need to be trained, but it's like, it's as simple as having a conversation
Yep.
like, "Hey, how's your day going?" It's going bad. Well, why
Yeah.
is that?
Something
And
meaningful.
just actively listening instead of saying, "Here's what you need to do." It's, "How can I help you?" Because actions will always speak louder at the end of the day,
Yep.
than
Yep.
words to me. Like, if my friend didn't call, as I said, I don't think I'd be here. And that's like that. I don't know. That's something that really resonates with me. I feel like I'm
Same.
getting a little
Yeah.
worked up here, but
Oh,
like,
you're good.
that's
No, you're good. This is
for me.
great.
I feel unfortunately like the church and a lot of other things are passive. Not that they are. Like, my one friend, like, is very active in the church. He's one of the most active people and, like, perfect example of what a Christ follower should look like,
Yeah.
genuinely, in my opinion. And
The,
unfortunately, those are far and few in between.
and
Yeah.
differences is churches are a business too, and
Yep.
Yes.
so that's why you get this mentality for a lot of people because it is a business. It is a superficial thing. It's an identity and a look, right? Um,
Yeah.
and that's where that's why things get pushed aside until the worst. And it does take, like you said, a friend. I had the same thing. There's no way that nobody didn't see that I was going downhill,
Yeah. It's
but
unfortunate. They're just like, "He's just troubled," or
yeah, but nobody did
demonic
anything about
forces.
it and got to the same point and had a razor up to my wrist and was ready to go and went halfway and then had a friend like, call me on my Nokia 3310 that had a yellow smiley face on
Dang.
the back of it. Yeah, I'm old school. We're legit old school.
Oh, you were one of them rich boys
Survive an
then.
atomic bomb, those Nokias.
Yeah, I was one of those rich ones.
Yeah, that was the
Yeah.
rich person one,
Yeah,
man. I'm talking about the
yeah,
2600 now. That
yeah,
was
yeah.
That's
Okay.
a phone.
that was
iPhone got
unkillable.
nothing on that.
All right,
Yeah.
nerds. No, I was just kidding. But yeah, I mean, it comes down to that too. Like if I didn't have someone to reach out, and that's kind of the part that's super cool about this and other platforms out there is that people are out there doing this and it is making a difference.
Yeah.
And make sure that you don't let anybody tell you that it's not,
Oh gosh.
because that means they're not making a difference.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And or you have to, I'll say there has to be the professional realm at some point for some people,
Yes.
but at the same point,
Like anxiety is a good
that's
example
not
of
the
that one.
yeah. Well, and when it becomes clinical, like me, I don't diagnose people, so I'm like, you're bipolar, we need to go talk to somebody.
Yeah,
Somebody beyond
no,
me,
like
because I don't.
Mhm.
But
that or WebMDing it up. I'm just like, no. Like
Oh,
I literally went to
yeah.
a professional. They said I had PTSD or what
Yeah,
have
yeah,
you, which
yeah.
I do, and those things. And it's like you want to go to a professional and like get the help because you whole
And
problem that
cancer.
doesn't exist. Yeah,
You have done diets. I mean, you have cancer too. I
Yep.
stubbed my toe. What's wrong? Well, you stubbed
COVID.
your toe and you have cancer and
Yeah.
COVID now. Actually,
Yeah,
COVID
yeah.
probably trumps cancer.
Tested positive.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Yeah, right.
But yeah. So just word of the wise. Don't let people tell you that you're not doing a good thing, because again, that means they're not doing anything.
Yeah,
So-
Yeah.
I think it's really cool seeing the dynamic there, like, because like to me it's interesting seeing like how you guys work in two different fields, but it's almost like a kind of a natural progression, because I mean, like, Dustin, you're gonna be more like that entry level, like you're
Oh
that,
yeah.
hey, I have this issue, I need a friend to talk to about it.
Yep.
And you're building that trust, like we said, and you're giving them the help, you're using your empathy to go through your struggles, you're very open about the things you struggled with and
Because
hoping
I
that you
never
can help
was.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like at that point, if it needs to go further to somebody like Graham, you've already built that trust enough to say, hey man, like, I want
I'm
you to
just a
get the help
bridge,
you need.
honestly.
Exactly. But I mean, even still, there's some times where like you won't even be a bridge. Like maybe they don't even need to
Yeah.
cross that bridge. There's gonna be times I would be willing to bet that there's
There's gonna be
situations
times when you're the stop sign for sure.
100% that
I've
you
had
don't
people
even know
come
about.
back and said, "Hey, man, like, thank you for talking about this. Like, sorry I haven't been around for a week, but I've been dealing with this stuff and like I've gotten the help I need or I've taken the time to process it because of these things like you've said or what have you." And I'm just like, dude, never apologize for doing the right thing that's right for you because I
100%.
made that mistake. Like, that is a good thing. Like, treat yourself like somebody you've loved. Like, and that is why that like video is so impactful to me is that with mental health, it's really weird in the sense that, like, if you had a sick pet or something that was dying and, like, you knew it needed medication and stuff and needed to get exercise, yeah, it's a family pet. You're gonna do it. You're gonna make sure it takes its meds. You're gonna make sure it goes out for walks and stuff. But the moment that we consider ourselves like that, we're like, we're not worth it. We give more value to our pets, and we need to look at the person in the mirror and see that they have just as much value. And to me personally, it's indefinitely more value. And
Yeah.
once you start living with that perspective and you start treating yourself right like that, like I think a lot of the problems we've created are things that we've been fed and told, and we need to get
Mhm.
our mind in the right, focus or perspective. And that's what I
Yeah.
try to do is help guide people out of those things if I can. And if I can't, obviously give them to someone like Graham or point them to a resource or
Yeah.
something that I think would be beneficial based upon the conversation we've had.
Yeah. Well, and it's so cool to me because like a big reason why like I wanted you have you on this show is what you're doing. It hasn't been around a long time. A lot of times, people would be sitting alone until they have a crisis where they need to call somebody like Graham. So I mean, what I think you're doing and others like you are doing is revolutionary. I mean, you're starting to root out these issues where they begin or before they begin. And that's a resource that hasn't been available, especially to the youth, if I'm going to be honest. Like, I mean, I don't
Yeah, it's
necessarily, I mean, I
unfortunate.
imagine you have a
Yeah.
lot of adults probably too, but I would be willing to guarantee that you also deal with a lot of teenagers and stuff that don't know how to talk about these feelings.
I have a lot of younger staff and it's very interesting in the sense that I say this a lot and it's not to be mean or rude, but it's like it's easier to talk to a child about a concept or something and they get it and they grasp it and they understand it and they're going to run with it. Whereas an
100%.
adult is usually so set in their ways and already so far gone. It is very hard to coax them out. And that's where like you have the relationships with clients that it's a very long-term goal. Whereas kids, they're taught at a young age in school to, resuscitate or not resuscitate, but to repeat,
Yeah,
take information in,
take in and regurgitate it. Yep.
regurgitate it. And
Mhm.
so if you can give them really good information like that from especially for mental health, which honestly I don't know many schools that are teaching it. Unfortunately, I wish they would. I wish it was added.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Social emotional learning is like still
I was
that's the
never
main.
taught it.
No,
Yeah.
me either.
No, you weren't. And if you were, it was by a teacher who like was a hippie
It's
and
not
like ran.
scheduled, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You know, the math teacher who also had birds sitting on her shoulder, and she's like, "Today we're going to talk about meditation." You know, like, but SEL is still such a very new concept that
Oh, yeah.
it's not a guarantee in schools, and main focus of it is like it's all consultation. Schools have to find grants, and get people in here to do that. They're not actually teaching it as a main thing. Now, a lot of elementary schools are really picking up social emotional learning and
That's
taking that time
awesome.
to work with kids and have safe spaces, calming spaces, you know, and taking mental health very seriously. Because and another part of this too is that's where it should be before it comes to a counselor, right? Is that the classroom should be teaching it. You should have that support within
You've
your
gone
friends.
through all the steps you can, and now it's
Yeah, yeah. You're
beyond.
learning coping skills, you're learning calming skills, relaxation skills, all these different things. But when it comes to a lot of schools where that funding's not there, the problem that comes out of it is um, the schools don't have their own counselors. They have guidance counselors, and
Yeah, which
guidance
is big
counselors,
difference.
yeah, guidance counselors take on a lot of the mental health when they shouldn't be, or like
Mhm.
truancy
They're
trackers,
not
because
trained.
a lot of truancy trackers or coordinators are social workers. So then they have to take on these things too. And so schools don't hire their own mental health. They don't hire therapists. They don't hire CTSS counselors or things like that or case managers. So all of it again is grant funded. And so like I work in a district that has not I'm just gonna say 1,000 kids in it. Currently, I'm the only mental health provider.
That's a big load.
How does a school district expect, you know, and this is not mine, you know, specifically mine, but like any school district think
Oh, yeah.
that one mental health provider, who's not a therapist, I'm not a therapist, um, who doesn't get to, I mean, that's one, and I can have a max of like 24 to 26 kids out of 1,000. Now, I'm in a low income area, and that also says a
Yeah,
lot of mental health, but it also says
that's
the
the
great
reality.
kids, yeah, the reality is everyone has mental health. It's just when it's come up. It's like cancer. Everyone's got cancer, right?
Yeah.
It's just when does it hit us, you know?
When do the
Um,
effects finally start coming to the surface?
Yeah, so it's very much the same, and so that's the hard thing about that, and so that's where again I go back to like the more things that can be out there for kids or adults. I don't work with adults because, like what you said earlier, the impact is now when they're young. It's much
Yes.
harder.
Yeah.
I did chemical dependency for 10 years. I will never work with adults in chemical dependency because it's so hard
And
to say.
that's what David does. And like I remember there were like I got to see like him come back from days of like doing those things, and like he loves his work, but like he was just so exhausted and stuff. But like the spark and fire in his eyes and like how much he cared was like super cool to see.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
Oh,
such
yeah.
a good
that's the
dude.
hard part. The care part doesn't ever go away, right?
Yeah.
But it's near demoralizing. Like I have a saying, like if you have one good day, you need to stretch it to 45 as a
Yeah.
worker, because you're only going to have one good day in
Yeah.
45 days, and
Yeah.
you have to stretch that 24 hours into 45 because it's so hard to convince people or work with people who are just in a rut so badly, whether it's chemical dependency or mental health, especially adults, because adults have free will and choice.
Yes.
Mhm.
Kids, and they're not impressionable anymore, because they're like, this is my life. This is what I get to do. They're no longer impressionable. Where kids are impressionable, you can be the cool guy with tattoos or with a llama or whatever it may
That's
be.
that's literally I gotta talk about him in a moment. But
Yeah,
yeah.
and have those things, and kids are gonna go, and younger impressionable people, not even kids, impressionable people are gonna go, all right, this cat's pretty cool. I'll
Yeah.
listen to him and maybe get something out of them. Where adults would be like, "Who the fuck are you?"
Well,
You know?
kids are still looking for
I
role models.
I make
Honestly,
more
yeah.
money than you. Yeah, yeah.
Like, let me
Like,
tell you, like it's
Sorry.
interesting because originally back when I first started streaming when all this happened, I was like, I felt super alone. I like was applying for my dream job and I didn't get it. Another part that I didn't mention is like someone who had my dream job, who was married, had kids, had everything I ever wanted, like for graduating with a pastoral degree, like getting a church, like ended up committing suicide.
hmm,
And it really hit me. I'm like, you can have everything. You can have the wife, you can have the kids, you can have the dream job and still like it just blew my mind that someone would go to that level. And that also kind of changed my perspective on things. And like in the sense with like with streaming, like we don't talk about religion, we don't talk about politics unless it's personally affecting us individually.
Mhm.
Like besides, because I mean we had to talk about COVID and all those things, but to me, it's always I'm like, yeah, there's people who have bad days, and it's like let's focus on what brings us together and how we can solve a problem instead of creating them. And
Mhm.
like the other fun thing is like using Larry, like keeps the imagination alive. Just a simple stuffed llama. What I used to do when I was at my sister's place, I would literally be sitting on my bed with the camera. There's still videos on YouTube. They're terrible. Please do not watch them. I have to get them removed at some point. But I do
Definitely
think they're
watch
there for
them.
growth. Yeah.
We'll have links.
But
We'll have links in the description for those.
yeah. But every single game I would play, I would leave up a pop figure or what have you for either what game I was playing or what we'd be playing next. And one day I had Larry just sitting there, and like I just had the Fortnite llama sitting there, and someone was just like, "Wait, who's that in the background?" I looked and I was like, "Oh, well, that's Larry. Like the green screen of the scenes that you see, like he does all that. Like he's pretty good. He doesn't talk much, but he's a really big help." And
Yeah,
like he just instantly became this like overnight
like a
like
mascot.
sensation mascot for like the stream. And then I took him away, and like they're just like, "Well, where's Larry? What's he doing?" And I'm just like, "Well, great. Now I got to keep this up. Like, thanks a lot, everybody." But in doing so, like people are excited. We literally have scenes now when I do like a be right back screen. I have a scene where a plane takes off, you hear a plane take off, and you see an entire like you see the inside of an airplane. There's like 5 different Larrys popping up and like doing something. And then you see the plane landing and he's like in Canada because I have fans in Canada. He's going to New York. He's going to these different places. And it's like to them, they're like, wow, this is so cool. Like Larry's here. And they feel more connected and a part of that. And it helps break down more of those little barriers and like feeling that you're so far apart and you're so far away and you feel alone. Like, no, like we may be on separate sides of the roads with screens, but like we're closer as we can possibly be. And we can have a friendship like we're both sitting at a couch playing games. And like
Absolutely.
that's what I had growing up with my brother. Like I have 3 older brothers and 2 younger sisters. And so when I talk about stories of growing up on the farm and family dynamics, people it instantly creates a connection because other people have siblings and stuff. They know what it's like. But it's
Mhm.
like I was like for me growing up, those are some of the best memories I had was just playing video games and doing stuff. And if we can and my brother and I would talk about deep stuff and like that's what I want to do with mental health. And so
Yeah.
like that is I try not to overcomplicate or overanalyze what I do. Just being diagnosed with ADHD and having PTSD and things, my brain can just keep going for like days on end. But it's like it's just that simple. It's literally like sitting down, playing games with your best friend, and just talking things out and having those conversations, inviting people into your home to have an experience with you.
Yeah,
And
that's awesome.
yeah,
You know,
can't
you,
make it
That's
any simpler than that.
75% of the reason we do this podcast. Like, I mean, when we did our first episode of the revamped podcast,
Yeah.
like, I mean, our goal has always been like the conversations we
Mhm.
have are going to be very reminiscent of the conversations you're going to have with your best friend. Like,
Yeah.
it's not going
Exactly.
to
And
be
that's what
like
I love
listening
with
to
your mission.
professional. Yeah, like we want to be as real as we possibly can be. So I mean, like if you were to talk to me outside of the podcast, the conversation is going to be pretty similar. I mean,
Yeah. Whereas on Twitch
what you
and
see
those
is what you
things, we're
get.
kind of limited. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But what I was thinking about as we're talking about this is like I don't necessarily know because I know you're a little bit younger than us, not too much, but like Graham maybe even more
27.
so because he's definitely older than us. But like the mentality of when we were growing up,
Wiser.
jury's out on him
what
being wiser.
Respect the
right?
one with the hair.
Like what I was thinking about is like you see all these things like on the internet and social media already is pretty poisonous as it is. But like hearing
Yes.
like,
Very
back
toxic.
in my day, we didn't have safe spaces. You got over it like a man or, all this stuff. I mean, unfortunately, I think that
Yeah.
women probably have it way worse than well, I mean, men are told to just shove it back, don't talk about it, be a man. Women,
I
they're
feel women are
expected to
far superior communicators than we are, honestly.
100%, 100%. And like women are always expected to be the emotional ones who want to talk about their feelings all the time, which is
Yeah,
great.
the
Like,
traditional
but like
consensus.
men,
Not
push it,
anymore, man.
push it
That's
back.
that's completely switched. Like
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I bet.
honestly, and that I'm gonna blame that on your generation. No, just kidding. But legit, no, like that completely has switched. Where it's becoming more acceptable for men to
Yeah.
do this stuff, and women are becoming the backbone, as
Yeah.
they have probably, let's just be honest, as they always have been.
Yeah.
you know
100%.
um
Because most of
yeah.
the time, men only felt really comfortable maybe expressing their feelings to their wife, if at all. Because I mean, most
Yes.
of the time, like if you look at like the way like the traditional family
Dynamic.
roles,
Yeah.
family dynamic, family roles, like the women were always the emotional support for the
Mhm.
kids, for
Especially in
themselves,
my
and the
family. Yeah.
husband, yeah, and the husband is always, I'm the breadwinner. Anything that I have an issue with or I'm feeling down about, I'm gonna remain strong. Like that. That's the hot word there. Remain strong, and upkeep this mentality of I'm a rock. How many times have you heard somebody say their dad was a rock with his emotions? I've never seen that man cry in my life. Things like that, and like that really sucks, because I mean, I think our generation, the millennials, we're the last generation like where that stuff is kind of taking a little bit of hold, but even at the same time, we're still like, I'm questioning that. And you're seeing that with like the things
Yeah.
about toxic masculinity, things like that. We're actually, I mean, we still have some of those
Residual effects from previous
yeah, I mean, because I
generations.
mean, I'll be honest. I mean, seeing my dad, like, I didn't see my dad cry until I was probably 27. Yeah,
My
let's
dad
say
only
like
has
let's
ever
say like
cried
25.
twice that I know of. Once when I was run over by the tractor and he carried my body in to show my mom what had happened,
Wow.
and when he dropped me off at college. Those
Yeah,
are the
and
only 2 recorded times I know that my dad has ever cried.
yep,
Hmm.
and so like we still have a little bit of that built into us. Like we need to be strong, but
Me, not so much.
right. And I think, and like I still struggle with that. Like I'm somebody who definitely tends to take my emotions and shove them down deep, because like my family, they're very, I mean, I wouldn't say they're very emotional, but they definitely are more apt to wear their
Expressive?
emotions on the, yeah, they're more expressive, yeah. But I mean, the nice thing about our generation is that we're at least questioning it. And then you
Yes.
have like Gen Z, they're very open with their emotions. They're like, I feel like shit today. Something sucks. I didn't have a great day, and you're all going to know about it. And I think that's good. I do think that it does
Well,
still
that's like
suck
when you
to see
said
that
when
stuff.
you said you're taking a mental health day. I'm like,
Yes.
what's that? I'm the generation outside of that goes,
Oh, so
you
you
just work through your shit. I know what it is. I mean, I do my own
yeah.
version of it, but I don't, when it comes to like my life, there's no putting anything on pause. Like you just keep going and keep going, because I was raised, suck it up, deal with it.
Suck it up,
Yeah.
buttercup. Like, that's the same with my
Yep.
dad, honestly,
Yep.
on that end. But,
And I
like,
do
from
it.
yeah.
Even when I'm old, I do it. I teach differently, but personally, I do
Yeah.
that. I still
I
just
mean, I
work
catch
through it,
myself all the
which is
time
not good.
telling my son, like, hey man, why are you crying? Like, you gotta man up. And like I remember specifically, like I was in a class at BSU. It was men and women in society, and it was all about that. We tell our sons to man it up, and stop crying. And I catch myself all the time, like, you know, why do I say man up instead of saying, hey man, let's have a
What's
conversation.
wrong?
What's wrong? And I feel like that's such an easy pitfall for us to fall in as dudes, like, because we've been taught our whole lives, suck it up, buttercup, fuck
Yep.
your feelings. And like that's not helpful, like, because that's not helping us work through anything. And we forget that we're dealing with a child,
Yeah.
and like everything we tell our children, like we already said in this episode, they're at a very formable and formable,
Expressionable, yeah.
yeah, they're at an age where basically what you tell them, that sticks, like that's formative to them. And so
Yep.
like if I catch
You tell them
myself
to
all
suck
the
it up,
time.
buttercup, they're gonna start building that wall and building that thick skin, and it's the
Yeah,
wrong thick skin to have.
right.
Unfortunately, there's a
Truthfully,
difference between self-confidence and, like, I wanna say, conditional confidence,
Oh yeah, because you can definitely like put up the image all day that you're this self-confident person, but like nobody knows what you're feeling on the inside.
which
yeah.
Like, I mean,
is
you're
where it's
putting up this big
dangerous.
wall.
Well,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's where I would say for like me and how we're looking at a bunch of different levels of how people are raised in generations here. How old are you? By the way.
Me?
Yeah.
27.
Okay. Damn. Okay. So anyway, like
I know, I
big.
really don't our family's gift with youthfulness. I only have the beard because if I go any place, I get carded.
Again,
There you go.
Matt was bald
Don't worry, I
at
still do.
27 and
I was.
and fat, so you're okay. But
Yep.
but like for me, when you talk about like I was always that, so like I'm the rock for this is why counseling works for Graham, because Graham can take on anybody's crap, everybody's crap, know how to deal with it in the moment and long term, but that's everything. That's not just work, that's friends, that's peers. Like this weekend I dealt with, and when you came on, I was actually dealing with a mental health situation from a family member down in a different state. That, hey, I'll be right back, because I got a phone call from someone who's dealing with a
Yeah.
lot of stuff. And then I traveled to the cities to deal with mental health this weekend for a friend, because I'm always that solid rock. And that's that suck it up, buttercup thing, because here I am taking on everyone's dirt and everyone's trauma,
And who are you
and,
gonna?
and it's
How are you
becoming
gonna cope
mine.
with it and deal with
And
it? That's
I don't, until like that breaking point, or I still do it individually. I don't do it with people.
yeah. I think that's the
That's a
biggest
bad
difference.
thing too. Again, and here I am, like, preaching to the choir, because I say this to everybody and teach it to everybody, but then I'm not doing as I say,
Yeah.
because of that mentality of growing up in like suck it up, buttercup. Just be a man, do what you're supposed to do for everybody else, and that's how it is. So it's good that like the generations underneath me, not us, because none of you guys fit in my realm. Hate you all. But this is the part, learn from your elder, right? Like
Yeah.
gr- continue growing and understanding like it's okay to be vulnerable, because when you're not vulnerable, you still may be a strong person, but you're strong for everybody else, not yourself. And that's kind of like the part where I sit, where I'm strong for everybody else, but not for myself. And it's not a
Yeah.
good place to always be. So it's good to like see generational change where it's good to be vulnerable, because that's actually being a strong man or a strong woman, or a
See,
strong individual.
I think it's the verbiage, honestly, for me, like, because I say it's okay to be vulnerable, but I usually put it as it's okay to be true to yourself. It's okay to be true to your feelings. As
Yeah.
long
I
as
like
you're
that.
not doing it in a destructive manner. Like, I remember growing up, like, contrary to popular belief, like, growing up, I was a huge sore loser. I would get super ragey. You never see that from me anymore. I always be like, "Well, I'm gonna walk away." And what did it for me is when I was younger, I would literally flip over the Monopoly board. You can ask all my siblings. I was a terrible 52 card pickup, paper cuts, you name it. But I remember one day I got so mad, my mom told me to clean my room. I started throwing all my Legos. There's this hole in my wall. We were remodeling a house, and I shoved them all down there, and I lost my Darth Maul, like original Lego piece down that hole. And I remember taking it back.
No,
And so to this
man.
day, I've learned that anger creates loss and it makes you do things you regret. And so because of
Why
that,
couldn't you
from when I
been
was at a
Jar Jar
young
Binks?
age, yeah, why couldn't have been Jar Jar Binks? But
Yeah.
literally because of that, like I do not get angry very easily.
Yeah.
Like I learned very quickly at a young age. Whereas like now, I feel like there's a lot of people I know where it's like there's friends I have that like get super angry and super raging. I'm like, dude, okay, we need to take a moment and step back and like breathe in through the nose, breathe out. Take a moment to just step back, ground yourself. Like, is it really worth it? Like, because
Well,
people have broken
I was gonna say
controllers and things, but like,
Alan has seen that. Like game rage is ridiculous. Like,
oh,
again, I didn't grow up with any of that. Like, because if we had a game, it's because we rented it and put it in a big foam package and then
mm,
biked 8 miles home, and we're like, we're not gonna mess this up. And like, it took
yeah,
us forever to save for this. But like game rage is insane. But like even Alan can attest. Like for me, Alan's been in the band with me for 10 years, and he's like, and I'm pretty solid, right? Like I'm the
Yep.
guy that all you
Oh
guys
yeah,
go to.
yeah.
You guys got issue, you go to Graham. Graham's got to fix it. Blah 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 blah. One moment in 10 years, and Alan absolutely saw me explode and destroy, like nearly destroy my drum set. I was so pissed off, and
I
it
think
was
you
just a
told me about
culmination.
this.
Yeah, and
yeah,
Alan being Alan is just like,
Okay.
quit being a bitch, and just kind of walked away. And everybody, but everybody walked away because they're like, this is not Graham.
normal, yeah,
Yeah. And then 5 minutes I went back and I apologized to everybody, and I love you, and fixed it, because that's the other part of manning up that I personally do, is like, you can't do that shit, Graham. Like,
Yeah,
but that
except
was
when you're
that was a culmination, because what happened? I had a friend. What happened during that time? I had a friend. I had a friend just do something. Well, I've had a lot of friends do some stuff. I have friends who are in prison for killing people, so that's great. But like I had this massive situation going on at the time, and I took it out on the people I loved the most, which was my band minus lead guitar player.
That's a whole nother
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, that's another podcast. Lead guitar players.
Let's just put it this way: if you've ever seen Spinal Tap, we go through lead guitar players like they go through drummers.
That's true. That's
Yeah,
true.
yeah. But yeah, so I mean, like that's the part of the build-up factor is that people need to be careful of is if you can't identify your breaking point or how much, especially in the
Testing
helping
your
realm.
limits.
If you're a helper, if like I am, like you are, an advocate, if we're those type of people, you have to get to that point. You have to know when's the water gonna go over the floodgates, because if it does, you ain't gonna be able to help anybody else. And that's the hard part about like even generational growing up, where you're told suck it up. There was no emotions. You didn't have any males in your life that had any emotions. They were all just angry cusses.
Yeah.
And so that's the part, like in mine, thank God you found out early.
Yeah.
I'm still 40 and still figuring it out.
Yeah.
Which is
I
okay.
mean,
And you will too. And
Everybody's
so will Matt, and so will, well, we don't know about Alan. He's got, I still think he's an alien, so
All that reminds me, like
Definitely
like
something.
when I was at Oak Hills, we used to play Magic the Gathering all the time in the downstairs. And, like, I remember this one time where somebody screwed me over so hard just to screw me over, and I flipped the table.
Literal
And then
table flip.
Oh, flipped it. Cards everywhere. But the nice thing is, after every game subsequently, like we had a routine. So after every game we played, we'd go out and we'd go to, well, at some point the smokestack was still there.
The stack.
And that was like a little changing room by the lake.
I remember.
It was either there
Or at
or
least
then they
the
tore that
slab that's
down.
there.
Yeah. When they took that down, we'd go to the dock and there was a piece of concrete sticking out of the water. You remember that?
Yep, we'd stand on that.
We'd stand on that because we weren't technically on campus. But we'd go out there and we'd smoke cigarettes and we'd talk about, well, if I would have done this, I probably could have won. And then it'd be like, well, I could have done this. And we would just talk about what coulda, shoulda, would have been. And like that was it. And we'd finish our cigarette, or sometimes 2 or 3, depending on the game, and we'd go back in and we'd play another one. But it was like clockwork every single time. Like that was what stopped me from flipping tables anymore. Is just like, I had this and you assholes, you wouldn't let me use it. But like, I think that's very important, finding that breaking point and then finding a way that you
To
can
cope
get away
with it
to cope
in a
with
healthy
it.
manner.
Yeah,
And I think
exactly.
that's the hardest part is like,
Yeah.
for me having ADHD and what have you, like I remember at Oak Hills, we went through like RA training, dealing with escalations and stuff, and this helped me so much in for people. It was great, but like for me, like they'd be like, okay, we're gonna take like 5 minutes and do a meditation. And I'm
Yeah.
just sitting there like, close your eyes, take a deep breath. I'm just like, this is so
Screw
stupid.
closing the
what
eyes.
heck? Yeah, like I could never do it. Like
Yeah.
that whole thing. It's not my way of like coping with stuff and dealing with things. And I think it's like learning your limits and testing your limits, but also when you like find yourself at those limits, how do you release that like energy in a way that's positive? Like whenever I
Yeah.
was angry growing up, I would just go play video games and like troll people because it was in a digital world. I'm not physically hurting anyone. As opposed to like throwing a bunch of Legos, losing another important thing or what have you, or damaging something that I can't get back.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's good you say that too about finding your limit. Like MySpace being a safe space. MySpace. By the way, you probably weren't even live when MySpace was up.
Tom is still our
I
friend.
know what it is.
Okay, I
wish
know
it
what
was
it is.
mine.
I saw it in the
Tom
history
is much
books.
better than the Zuck.
They taught that in history class. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good, great. But like that's a part of like you said, finding a limit, because as a professional, you have to teach all these different models of like yada yada yada. But like in my room, one person's meditation is I have a boxing bag in my room. That's a
I'd
meditation.
probably be at that one.
Yeah. I put corn on or Slipknot on, crank it up, and they just beat the tar out of the boxing bag. And people are like, well, that's not therapeutic. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
And there's like a teacher's face on there, and you're like, "Oops." No, I'm just
Yo,
kidding.
no, well, and there has been moments, and but
I'm not
but
wrong.
that's again about like, making sure that you're open minded, and making sure that the people you're working with too. So if you do get into professional realm,
Yeah,
or you push people to professional realm, like they need to understand like this is your your session. This is for your well being, your mental health,
yeah,
and that's how I look at it. Like I work too long where it's like, well, I'm in charge. No, I'm not. I'm here for you. I mean, yes, I'm getting paid, but I'm here for you.
yeah.
What do you need? And so that's like I have one kid specifically in the past. That's what it was: Slipknot and beating the tar out of my boxing bag. And I'm like, yeah, you kill it, do whatever you want, man. Like those are the cool things about like understanding yourself and being allowed to understand yourself. Um,
Well, I think it's having the right and the privilege. Whereas, like, if you had done that, like growing up in like the Christian church or something, like
Nope.
God forbid, you would have been like excommunicated or what have you.
That's
I
secular
remember.
music.
Yeah, like seriously, like it just drives me nuts.
thank
You can
God
have
I
C.S.
didn't
Lewis,
grow
but
up
you
in the
can't have Harry
church.
Potter. But like for me personally, like that would have been. I don't know what my parents would have done. They probably would have put me in a timeout, and I would have just run my fingers up and down the wall and like thinking about how I'm gonna get revenge and stuff. It really taught me good lessons. No, it didn't help me at all. I found like just going on walks and
Yeah.
like physically just getting the energy and draining it out of me like was super beneficial. Whereas like in the church, oh, just sit in the pew and go to work and like it just and for some people that works. And so I don't mean to knock that, but I mean like for me personally, like I wish that they would be more open to like other methods that may not seem orthodox because the benefits are like so crucial for so many people and they just don't get it. And so then they just live with stress in their life, which physically affects their health. And they keep
Yeah.
doing these things out of thinking they're helping them, but it's really not.
Okay,
Um,
so
yeah.
where can people find you?
Yeah.
So I mean, I stream
Link it
on
up here.
Twitch. I stream on Twitch weekly, twitch.tv/SSGohpom. You can also find me on TikTok. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter. I'm pretty much on anything and everything. You can find me via SSGohpom, Super Saiyan GoPom. That's what it stands for. Or you can just call me Pom, call me Dusty.
Yep.
As I said, we're all family here.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, we'll post all your links for sure. Not that we have much of a following, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, we'll get you there. I'll talk you out on the
irregardless.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dustin also has a Discord on his links there too.
Yeah, if you
I'm
go to
part
my
of it.
TikTok, there's a link tree. And if you
Yeah.
hit that, you can get my Twitter and everything. So like
I'm
if you
sorry,
want to
that's
get plugged in
why
and
your
get
phone was
connected,
going
that is
off.
the best way to do it.
Yeah. Well,
Love to have
Dustin,
a conversation. Love to get to know you.
we really appreciate having you here. I mean,
Thanks for
there's
having me.
a lot of good stuff that we talked about tonight. Is there anything in closing that you'd like to tell anybody who's watching you here today?
Honestly, like just going back off that video, like treat yourself like someone you've loved. Like honestly, 2020 has been a very, very rough year for a lot of people in 2021. You have the potential to make it a lot better. And honestly, if you need help, please reach out to one of us or get assistance. If you need a vent or talk or anything, like seriously, hit me up. I will get to you when I can. If not, stop by, see me and stream. Would love to get to know you more.
For sure, man. Alan will have our links in the video.
Yep.
With that, you've been watching It's a Grandma Matt podcast.
Yeah, I'm
Matt.
Graham.
Matt.
I
Alan.
beat you. I beat you.
I'm Matt.
Stay healthy, stay awesome.
You guys
Yeah.
have a good night now. Peace.
Love you guys. See ya.
Peace.